Hi guys, it's Kirsty. Today's video is about setbacks on our recovery journeys from OCD or anxiety. But before I go into that, I'd like to ask, please do subscribe by clicking on the subscribe button below in order to stay up to date with new videos as they're released. So it's important to cover the topic of setbacks on the recovery journey from a couple of different perspectives, because it's something that we will all experience on the recovery journey. It's an important part of the journey itself, because we don't just go from being chronically anxious and locked on to suddenly not locked on and not chronically anxious. You know, there's learnings along the way and there's ups and downs, and quite often on the recovery journeys, the way that we learn how to improve is by learning what not to do. And in order to learn what not to do, we need to, have setbacks and mistakes, because it shows us that we're, maybe where we haven't been going quite along the right path. So, for those of us suffering with OCD, we learn after a while that's the safety behaviors that we've been doing, the compulsions, the avoidance, have not been helping to dig us out of our discomfort. So we learn then that we need to do something different, and that's when we start to learn more about the things that are helpful for recovery. So it's these things that we realize that we're not doing right that lead us to then looking for answers about the right things for us to be doing, the helpful things for us to be doing. And sometimes when we experience setbacks on our recovery journey, this can be highlighting to us new unhelpful behaviours that we weren't previously aware that we were doing. So by this, I mean that we could be making a bit of progress on our recovery journey, feeling a bit better, but then have a bit of a setback where we're going through a phase of not feeling so great again. And this is where maybe we start to look at, okay, so I'm not doing the original compulsions that I'm doing. You start to maybe uncover other more sneaky compulsions that you might have been doing. For example, subtle reassurance behaviours, are there little checks that you're doing? Are you still maybe watching information videos a little bit too often? Are you asking your partner or your parents or your friends subtle reassurance questions? Or are you actually, have you been in your head a lot recently? Have you been, and perhaps this is where you highlight, realise that, okay, it's been a bit of a stressful time. Perhaps actually I've been ruminating quite a bit recently, and that's what's kind of got me a bit more stuck again. So the next part of my journey might be that, I'm ruminating about this particular thing. That's another fear that's gripped me. So perhaps I can start disputing that. So, that's, one of the ways that, setbacks can be quite helpful for us. It shows us some of the extra behaviours that were less obvious that we might have been doing that we need to correct in order to move on to the next phase of our recovery journey. As unpleasant as they are, it's unrealistic to expect that we wouldn't experience setbacks on our recovery journey, because even once you've, learned a lot about what you're dealing with and you're learning to kind of manage the symptoms a bit more and make progress, it's unrealistic to expect to never have slightly more anxious days or to never experience days of lower mood, because people, whether or not they are suffering from kind of chronic mental health conditions, still have days when they're feeling a little bit more stressed or they'll have lower moods. Of course, with us guys, because of what we've experienced previously, we've experienced really bad suffering with mental health difficulties. It can be scary when we have days when we're feeling a bit more anxious or a bit extra stressed or at lower mood, because we're afraid of where that might lead. But the thing is, though, is that from the point where we were at our worst to square one, we've grown our knowledge about what we're dealing with. So we're not going to go back to that point, because you won't just suddenly lose that knowledge. But I think it's the fear of those kind of lower mood days or those stressful days kind of lasting a long time again. But, you know, this is a big part of where the fear of fear comes in as well. And once again, that could be an indication that you're still, you know, you're still liable to get latched on because you have the fear of fear. So that's something then that might be highlighted that you need to be working on next. So that's kind of another way that you might identify something else that can get you to the next level of your recovery. It's, you know, it might be the fear of fear, or the fear of going backwards, or the, you know, fear of latching onto a new theme or something. Either way, it's all kind of the fear of the symptoms rather than what it might have been before, being the fear of, you know, the worst case scenario in your thoughts being real. So this is where, you know, it highlights another area that you can work on for disputing, and you can view your setback as an exposure. One of the things that makes it feel so much worse when we have setbacks, and when I refer to a setback, I'm talking about, you know, it feels like your symptoms are returning or kind of increasing again, is that because with OCD and anxiety comes, you know, sort of a tendency to catastrophize or think in a black and white way, or awfulize, as it may be. So when we do feel symptoms returning and a bit of a setback, it can feel like really, really bad, like we're back at square one because we're going to that black and white phase. But actually, you know, in the reality of it, we're probably not quite so bad as we had been previously, but because we're comparing the way we feel in that moment of the setback to how we had felt maybe the week before when we were doing okay, it feels really bad. So there's no point in the moment, you know, saying I'm not as bad as I was at square one. I'm not as bad as I was at square one, because obviously that's, you know, that would be repeatedly reassuring yourself. That's, you know, compulsive. But it's good to just kind of take it with a pinch of salt when you're having thoughts. Oh, this is really bad. You know, I'm back at square one and all of that. You know, you might be, as I said, disputing the fear of fear. When you're feeling like this, you know, the fear of return to square one or whatever that might mean. But where you can, just take it with a pinch of salt and be cynical about those thoughts that, you know, you might not be as bad as you think you are. It just feels really bad in the moment. But the good thing is about the point that you're at, though, where you're having a setback, is you can look at where you were the other week and look at, you know, how far you've got to. And it's good to remember, you know, you got to that point again. No, you got to that point previously. There's no reason why, you know, if you return to your disputing, perhaps you haven't, you know, perhaps you got a bit, took your feet off the gas with your kind of disputing and your recovery, or your exposures, or shame attacking, or whatever it is that you're working on, your beliefs. Perhaps you've taken your foot off the gas and got a little bit complacent because you were feeling good, and then you've had this setback. You know, it's your reminder to start disputing again. And you can see where you got to when you were doing well. So you just need to sharpen up your tools that you were using to get to that good point again. And this is all good practice for the rest of our lives, because you know, OCD is considered chronic, but it's considered recoverable from. We can recover from it with the right, you know, with the right balance of treatment and recovery work that's for us. You know, even if it takes a very, very long time, it's still in our grasp. It's still possible. So no matter how long it takes, you can still keep, you know that this is a fear cycle that you're caught in, and getting under that fear will help release the grip again. And however long it takes, you know you can get there. It just takes work. So, you know, our setbacks can be a reminder for us that we need to continue putting in the work. And, you know, it's nice, you know, sometimes after a while you can slow down the work you're doing on recovery. But like, while you're still, until you've kind of had long periods of time without it, you need to keep working on it. And even when you have long periods of time without sort of experiencing the symptoms, it's good to remember that you still do need to occasionally dispute, because we can become irrational again. You know, if we're around sort of other people who have irrational views on things, it's very easy to be influenced. Or if we're kind of, you know, listening to film and television as well, we could, you know, it's easy to be influenced and go back down the sort of the original paths, the original irrational beliefs that kind of contributed us to our OCD being able to latch on in the way it did, or anxiety, of course. So now I've kind of explained, you know, some of the reasons why we might experience setbacks, or perhaps some of the reasons why it might feel, you know, it could be helpful sometimes because it can highlight certain things, certain compulsions or irrational beliefs that we're still holding on to that we need to work on. But just to offer some more tips here. So the first one I would like to offer is, you know, if we've had a setback, you know, we've started engaging in avoidances or compulsions or a bit of rumination or something, we don't want to be beating ourselves up loads about this, because it's not automatic for us to be working on these new things. Sadie did a video on this channel quite a while ago now, but a really good one about, she related learning, you know, the new tools that you learn your OCD recovery journey to learning a new language. And I think this is something to remember, is that if our first language is a certain way, you know, trying to not be uncomfortable and finding ways to not be uncomfortable, which is completely understandable when you think about it. Who wants to be uncomfortable? So if you think about it as in that's our first language, but then we're having to learn this new language where we lean into some of our fears and we don't run away from things that frighten us or that make us uncomfortable. It's still not going, it's going to take a while for that to become more automatic. And some of it, well, most of it involves us making ourselves feel uncomfortable. So there is a lot of, you know, it takes willpower to do it. So it wouldn't have been our habit to necessarily be doing the things that we need to do for our recovery automatically. So it's like we could easily revert back to our first language. You know, the people who speak two languages sometimes accidentally dip into their first language. If they're having a conversation in their second language, but they're really tired, they might accidentally dip into their first language. So it could be useful to view it like that. Apologies if that sounds quite confusing. You know, so it's having that level of compassion for yourself, that it's going to happen. We're going to slip up. We're still learning. The next thing is, you know, don't let it drag you down. You know, you're going to be feeling crappy enough if your anxieties come back, and you probably will feel a bit, you know, low and disappointed, but try not to go into, where you can, try not to go into too much self-pity there, because again, that just takes your focus away from what needs to be focused on, and that's your recovery. But also, you know, it's carrying the extra feelings of anxiety with you as you go about your day-to-day life. Another tip that I would suggest also is don't cancel plans because of it. I would recommend doing what you're doing, you know, stick to your social plans, go to work, do the things that need to be done as you did previously when you were struggling. You can do it again. Just because you were feeling a lot better last week doesn't mean this week you can't still do the things that you need to do in your life. So don't cancel your plans because of it. You know, don't not exercise, don't skip your social plans, don't avoid spending time with your children, your partner, your friends. Still do all of this and bring it along for the ride as you did previously. And then lastly, as a tip, don't start frantically looking for new ways to recover. Just because you've had a setback, it doesn't mean that what you were doing before that got you feeling a lot, you know, quite a lot better or a bit better for a while. It doesn't mean that isn't working because it got you to that point of feeling a bit better. It just means that you've had a setback, as everybody does. So you don't need to scramble to find the next miracle cure that's going to get you better, or you don't need to scramble to change therapists or OCD coach or whatever, or new book or whatever it is. You can still continue using the tools that got you to, you know, feeling a bit better. Sometimes in panic, we can find ourselves desperately okay, that's not working again. It's kind of that black and white thinking aspect. Oh, I've got to find something else now because I'm feeling terrible. This isn't working for me. And then we start forgetting the progress that we had made because we doubt ourselves. That's what we do. It's, you know, you can go back to the things that you had done previously that led to some improvement. And I'm not saying that after a while you wouldn't necessarily consider bringing other things into your recovery journey. I'm just saying that in the moment, don't in a panic think you have to make big change, like you have to change what you're doing completely. You don't have to change therapists. You don't have to get a new book or, you know, leave the support group that you're in or something like that. You just might need to work a bit harder again on your disputing or exposures or whatever it is that you've been doing as your homework, working on your recovery that got you feeling a bit better for a while. So that was my last tip. So I hope this video has been helpful at discussing, you know, the ways that we can end up feeling when we have setbacks, some of the traps we might fall into, and then offering some tips that could be useful if you're experiencing a setback. But thank you very much for watching, and do take care. Bye.